Hi, welcome to our third installment of Spring Candida Detox webinar. And I'm excited about your progress and how far you've come. You've done such a wonderful job. I wanted to start with a little bit of housekeeping. I want to make sure that you remember that you've got access to these webinars over and over. You can watch the recording. We are recording them. And just make sure that you're not having any problem accessing them. So if you do, give me a chat in Healthy, and we'll see if we can't get you connected. So far, everybody's done really well with the tech stuff, and we haven't had too many issues. I had some technical difficulties, but other than that, I think everybody else is getting along quite well. I'm sorry again for the tardiness of the live class, but we're here now and everything is working really well. So first, I'd like to share my screen with you and work on a little recap of what we've been doing up to this point, answer some questions that we've had. And so I'm going to share the screen. And I'm having trouble. Yeah. All right. So here we go. We're going to share, we're going to start on our detox webinar, and we're going to start with a little recap. So want to say you guys are doing such a great job. You've had some good gut health. We talked about good gut health and the 4 things that you need, which is water, fiber, probiotics, and enzymes, and you guys are doing really good with that. Our goals for the week were, did you watch the squatty potty and the squatting videos? I hope you did, because there's a lot of good information on those videos. Everybody's doing a great job with their water consumption. I've seen a lot of you getting to your goal, and I'm so proud of you. You're almost doing it every day, and you're doing a great job. I want to talk just a minute about water consumption and some concerns that some of you have, and we'll talk about those questions that we have in a minute. ACV, our other goal. Are you getting that apple cider vinegar in? I know it doesn't taste good. Add a little bit of water to it. Don't drink it straight. It's not good for your teeth. Put it in some water, drink it down before your meals. It's really beneficial. There's so many health benefits to it. I just hate to take it away from you or have you miss out. So make sure you do those. And if you can't do it every time before a meal, at least do it a couple times a day. That would be excellent for you, at least to start. And once your gut gets healthy and you don't need to worry about those things quite so much, you can take it once a day and it'll still give you those health benefits. Really, really good stuff. All right, some questions that I had, I didn't get put in here about water consumption. Make sure that you're drinking 50% of your body weight in water or more. Okay, so that means in ounces. If you weigh 160 pounds, you're going to drink 80 ounces of water every day. And if you're not sure how to make sure you're drinking 80 ounces, then figure out how many 16-ounce bottles you need to drink, or figure out, fill a gallon jug container and use that to measure the amount of water that you're drinking so that you know that you're getting the full amount. Now, remember, if you're drinking alcohol, if you're drinking caffeinated drinks, which you should not be doing right now, but if you do, and in the future, you'll need to know this information, or if you have, if you're exercising, or if you are out in the sun this summer, it's coming. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but it'll be here. It's the first day of spring coming up. Those times you absolutely need to make sure that you're drinking more water, more than your 50% in ounces, okay? You need to get more water in. Another question I had was, about carbs. Let's go back to our original Candida diet and let's look at the second sheet. And you'll see, I don't have a picture of it, you'll see on the bottom it talks about the carbs. You need to keep your simple carbs down to 3 simple carbs a day. So that would be maybe a piece of toast at breakfast, some chips at lunch. Make sure you watch those serving sizes. We'll talk about that today. And excuse me. And and some rice at dinner. But you want to make sure that you stay within the serving size. And on the back, on that second page of the Candida Diet handout, it tells you some examples of serving sizes. You can also look at the serving sizes on the package, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I think that was most of the questions, so we'll move on to the second screen here. Okay, and so what are we talking about today? Exactly what we were just mentioning. We're going to talk about labels, what we're reading on our labels, and about some of the ingredients and some things that we need to be careful of. All right, so the very first thing that people look at is the sugar or the sodium. That's good. Those are important pieces of information on your nutrition fact. But before you go any farther on your labels and say, oh, I can have this because it has 0 sugar or it has only 1 gram of sugar. More than anything, you need to, at that point, look at the serving size and how many servings are in your container. So let's look. On this label, the serving size is 2/3 of a cup. The servings per container are about 8. Now, let me give you an example. If you have a can of tuna or a can of salmon, it might say that there's 7 servings, 8 servings, and that you should be able to get 7 or 8 servings out of that can. And if you can't, then if you aren't spreading that out over 8 servings, if you're eating that whole can and you look at the sodium and the sodium's 400 per serving, that means that if you eat 2 servings, you're getting 800 milligrams of sodium. So that's a lot of sodium for one meal. Actually, that's about 50% of the sodium you should be getting for the whole day. So we really need to be aware of the serving sizes, because those serving sizes are what the milligrams and the ingredients on the rest of the label are referring to. So looking at this one, a 2/3 of a cup of whatever this is, I don't know what it is, but 2/3 of a cup of this item gives you 230 calories. 72 calories of those calories are from fat. So that, and you'll see it says right there, amount per serving. So let's say you buy a bag of chips and the serving size is 10 chips, just saying, okay? And you eat half the bag. How many times are you going to have to multiply that 230 calories? So if there's 10 chips and there's 2 servings in the bag, then you've eaten the whole bag, okay? Then you've eaten almost 500 calories. And you would do that same thing all the way down the label list. So I'll give you another example. How many of you eat protein bars? Protein bars most of the time come 2 in a pack, but the serving size and the ingredients on the label is for only one of those 2 bars. And so if you eat the whole package, which most people do, then that package you need to double all of the ingredients amounts on the back. All of the nutrition label facts on the back need to be doubled, because you've just eaten twice as much. So if there were only 8 grams of sugar in that nutrition bar and you ate 2 of them, you have just eaten 16 grams of sugar, because you ate the whole pack, when the serving size was really only one of those bars in the pack. So it's real important to look and see, number 1, what is the size of the serving? And number 2, how many servings are in that container? Because it's only by the serving that we have our nutrition facts. All right, so let's move to the second section as soon as I can get my pointer to go where it's supposed to go. So this section has some additional information. This shows the amount of saturated fat is 1 gram. I think more importantly, and we'll talk a little more about fats today, is to stay away from the trans fats, because the trans fats are more problem for us than the saturated fat, but it will depend on the type of saturated fat, and we'll learn about that when we get to the ingredients. You'll notice, though, it says our total fat is 8 grams. Okay, but it doesn't tell us what the other 7 grams are from. That's an interesting piece of information. And the only way you're going to know is by looking at the ingredients when we get to the bottom. The ingredients may be that maybe this is a can of corn and there's only 8 grams of fat, but corn in and of itself has a certain amount of fat. And so 7 grams of that corn may be of that 7 grams of that fat may be corn, and the other is fat that they've added, saturated fat. So this is kind of interesting. Also, you'll see a percentage daily value. This is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you're a person that can tolerate a 2,000 calorie diet, then this is 12% of what you should be getting in your daily diet. This particular one has no cholesterol, but the sodium is 160 milligrams. Again, remember, we need to make sure that we keep up with the amount of the serving size. So if you are eating 2 servings instead of 1, then you have to double that amount. So that would be 200 or 320 milligrams of sodium. And so that would then be 14% of your daily value at 2,000 calories. All right, so your total carbohydrates are 37 grams. Important to keep up with carbohydrates. We want to keep our carbohydrates, especially our simple ones, down. But this one isn't too bad. All right. Fiber, we talked about our fiber last time that we were together, and so this has 4 grams of dietary fiber. Now, one of the things this doesn't show us is it soluble or insoluble fiber, and that's going to depend on the type of food it is. So that's why we go over the fiber, went over the types of fiber in the last class, because you need to know, is this fiber soluble or insoluble, or is there a combination of the two? And then, of course, there's only 1 gram of sugar in this item, whatever this item is. And then it moves on to the protein. Protein, this one has 3 grams. You need about 40 grams in the morning with your breakfast. So a couple of eggs. This would not be very much protein for you, probably a vegetable. All right. And then, of course, you have iron, calcium, vitamin C, vitamin A, and other vitamin and nutrients that the food has in it that is important for your daily consumption. Now, underneath that, it gives, on our label, it gives the percent of daily values. And these, as I said earlier, are based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And your daily value may be higher or lower. A man who's working out every day may want it higher. A woman who's trying to keep her waistline may want to bring that down a little bit. But you can see here that it shows the different amounts that you should have for your daily values. So it suggests to have 2,400 milligrams of sodium. And we're going to talk about that number in a little bit. We're going to talk about sodium after we finish going through the label information. Okay. Now, moving on to ingredients. Make sure, though, you do have a handout that has all of this information. Make sure that you get a chance to look. This says corn flour, sugar. Second ingredient is sugar, peanut butter, peanuts, dextrose, hydrogenated vegetable oil. That's one of those bad fats. Cottonseed and rapeseed oil, salt, oat flour, rice flour, coconut oil. Oh, there's one good oil. Salt, more salt. That's twice now we've seen salt. Caramel color, niacin, iron, zinc. So this has been fortified, whatever this is. It's been fortified with niacin, iron, zinc. It has a preservative. Let's see, thiamine, that's another fortification. Pyridoxine hydrochloride, another fortification, riboflavin, and folic acid. And those are all B vitamins, additives. This has been fortified, so you can see all the little single stars on there. It tells you those are B vitamins. Below that, it says the 2-1, which has the cottonseed and rapeseed oil. It says this adds dietarily insignificant amount of trans fats. Now, this is not the ingredients to the label that we saw earlier, so I need to clarify that this is a different label. This one says it actually has trans fats. Your cottonseed and your rapeseed oil are trans fats, which are the ones that we really need to stay away from. We'll talk a little more about fats in a minute. All right, so reading this, we need to look for certain things in our ingredients list. We need to look for sugar. Now, before we go any further with the ingredients list and getting into individual types of ingredients, I want to talk just briefly about how these labels work. The very first thing at the top of your label is corn flour. That means that whatever this is that we're looking at, it has more corn flour than anything else. It has more corn flour. It has the majority of ingredients in this item is corn flour. However, sometimes it'll have more sugar. Sugar is only the second thing on the list. More sugar than corn flour or more sugar than your initial ingredient. Not because it's high up on the list and it should be above that, but the types of sugar. And sometimes sugar is added 3 or 4 different types of sugar or different names of sugar, and you might have them farther down on the list, but you have more sugar than anything because of the different kinds. If you added those together, it would be higher up on the list. So for example, if you had cane juice and brown sugar and white sugar, regular sugar and molasses, and you had 4 ingredients, but they were all short, they were farther down on the list, that might end up being clear up at the top of the list because you've got 4 different ingredients. So they go by the amount of the ingredient, but it isn't the amount of sugar. It's just the amount of ingredients. Same thing with salt. They hide it in there toward the bottom of the list because they put 3 or 4 different kinds so they can keep it at the bottom of the list. So you want to be really careful and wise to how manufacturers are getting those sugars and things in your body without you even realizing it. Okay, sugar. So let's talk about the sugars. Sugars there are almost 100 different names for sugar ingredients. Fructose is sugar derived from fruit and vegetables. Lactose is milk sugar. Maltose is sugar that comes from grain. There are so many different kinds of sugars. And remember, we talked about the fact that the sugars coming will show low on the list of your ingredients, but there may be high amounts of sugar just because the manufacturer will come up with 4 different sugars that give the flavor that they want. And so sugar in and of itself will be really high in content. Overall sugars will be high in content, but all of the sugar types will be lower on the list because they have smaller amounts of individual sugars. And you can see here, these are ones that most of us would recognize, but there are also hidden sugars. So there are some words for sugars that people don't think about. Carbitol, concentrated fruit juice, corn sweetener, diglycerides. Corn sweetener, by the way, is a new way of saying high fructose corn syrup. You can go down this list. Maltodextrin, isomalt, Inversol, hexatol, xylitol, sucanat, sorghum, rice syrup, rice malt, pentose, and anything that ends in ose is a sugar. So if it says ose at the end, that it's a sugar of some kind. Tons of different hidden sugars that we don't even know that that's what they are. And so it's really important. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it's really important to understand that there are hidden sugars. And some people say that you should try just to keep your labels down to 5 items. So if you've got 5 ingredients, it's enough. If it's got tons of ingredients, or if half of those ingredients you can't pronounce, then you may go and find something a little bit healthier for you. Okay. There are also artificial sweeteners. Now, artificial sweeteners act like a low-dose psychiatric drug in our body. I know many of you have switched over to artificial sweeteners to get, thinking that it was healthy. And I'm going to tell you that a study in 2017 suggested that artificial sweeteners may increase your body mass mass index, may cause weight gain, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes. Another study showed that in patients with atherosclerosis or hardening of the arteries, 35% of them had a greater risk of metabolic syndrome, and 67% had an increased risk of type 2 diabetes because of using artificial sweeteners. So I want to warn you about the artificial sweeteners. They are not a safe option. Many manufacturers will say they are, but they really are not a safe option. One of the most used artificial sweetener that was developed back in about 35 years ago, I don't remember exactly when, is aspartame. And I have that first on our list, and I'm going to talk a little more about aspartame. Aspartame has, let me back up just a minute. Let's see. Yeah. Aspartame has a ton of research and side effects about it. It affects our eyes. It actually can cause vision loss. It can cause increased pressure in your eyes. It can cause dryness in your eyes. For your ears, it can create tinnitus or cause noise intolerances. There are neurological disorders like seizures, headaches, migraines, dizziness, memory loss and confusion, and even neuropathy can come from using artificial sweeteners, aspartame specifically. Physiological issues could include depression, irritability, aggression, and anxiety. Heart conditions can include tachycardia or rapid heart rate, palpitations, and even shortness of breath. Aspartame has been shown to possibly cause gastrointestinal issues like nausea, diarrhea, skin allergies, itching, rashes, or itching without a rash, dry skin, swelling in your mouth or lips. It's shown to have possible endocrine and metabolism issues causing those, like diabetes, or specifically difficulty maintaining your levels in diabetes or your blood sugar, hair loss and thinning, hearing impairment, slurred speech, hyperactivity, restless leg, and that list goes on and on. You have that in your handout. It can cause other metabolic issues, excessive thirst, fluid retention. It can also mimic some serious health issues like chronic fatigue, Epstein-Barr, Lyme disease, bloating, leg swelling. Some serious issues here: Meniere's disease, Parkinson's, dementia, even Graves' disease. And since it can contribute to metabolic issues, those things like Parkinson's, Meniere's, Graves' disease, or any other autoimmune deficiency or disorder can actually be caused or can be exacerbated by the use of these artificial sweeteners like aspartame. And then there are some critical things: aggressive behavior, depression, ulcers, hyperactivity, brain damage even, and some suicidal tendencies can all come, and death, if it goes that far, can all come just from the use, and I will venture to say overuse in most cases, of these artificial sweeteners. And if you're working on trying to keep your sugar levels down and you substitute your sugar for artificial sugars, you're going to exacerbate some of these other issues, and it may not cause them, but if you're using this more and you're eating a lot of this in a day-to-day basis, it can be very dangerous for you. So really recommend that you're careful with these artificial sweeteners, and try to keep the artificial sweeteners out of your diet. If you're going to need something sweet, we recommend stevia, monk fruit if it's pure, monk fruit, MONK fruit if it's pure are fine, but just a teeny tiny bit. And if you can, use stevia for sweetener. And then when your gut is healthy and you're able to eat healthy foods again, and you can add sugar but just keep your sugars down to a minimum. Sugar is never healthy for us. It causes more problems than it solves. And so trying to keep your sugars as natural as possible, getting to a point where, a piece of fruit is your dessert is always a plus, because it'll help your body. It can manage that sugar much easier, and it's all natural, and you get the enzymes so that you're not just putting sugar straight into your body like you do with the processed sugars. So, all right. Now, let's talk a little bit about sodium. Sodium is another one that hides in almost every kind of processed food. The average American consumes about 3,500 milligrams a day of sodium in their diet. We shouldn't consume more than about 2,400 milligrams a day, or what is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of sodium each day. And if you have elevated blood pressure, sodium-related health issues, if you are an African American, because African Americans tend to have a propensity for blood pressure problems and sodium, difficulty removing sodium from their tissue, you need to try to limit that to 1,500 milligrams a day. And I really suggest, and this is suggested by the American Heart Association, and I really suggest that everyone should keep their sodium levels down to 1,500 milligrams a day. Okay. Elevated tissue sodium is a key cause of high blood pressure, can also cause cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, and kidney damage. So you really want to be careful with the amount of sodium that you're eating. Ingredients lists, in your ingredients list, you want to look for any sodium, or word with sodium in it. Also, baking soda, baking powder, monosodium glutamate, or MSG, disodium phosphate, or salt. Specific sodium types can have their own individual dangers as well, like MSG. So we're going to talk a little bit about MSG, and you have a much bigger list in your handouts that you can look at. So monosodium glutamate is made by fermenting starch, sugar beets, or sugar cane, or molasses. It is used as a flavor enhancer, and in China and the Eastern countries, we see a lot, the Far East, we see a lot of foods that use monosodium glutamate. I don't know if any of you remember the meat tenderizer called Accent, or some people would use it as a seasoning called Accent. That seasoning is 100% pure monosodium glutamate. So you're getting 100% pure MSG, and really, really not healthy for our body. Glutamate is an amino acid, and many times it's advertised as a natural flavor enhancer or a natural seasoning, but it's an excitotoxin. It actually excites the nerve cells, and to a point where it can actually cause the nerve cells to die and cause nerve damage. It's the excitotoxin. Basically, it's a neurotoxin that excites, called an excitotoxin. It also is like the artificial sweeteners, which are also excitotoxins. They change the biochemistry of the brain and excites the neurons to increase the illusion of more flavor. But it is just that, it's the illusion. You aren't really getting more flavor. It's just enhanced your taste buds and your brain to be able to think you're getting more flavor. So that's why they use it in food, especially in food that's pre-made, and because there's not much flavor in that. If it's dried or whatever, they have to do something to make you think that it tastes good. So they add MSG. MSG is in almost everything that says hydrolyzed, coutolized plant protein, analyzed yeast or yeast extracts, calcium caseinate, calcium glutamate, gelatins a lot of times have MSG in them. Anything that says glutamate, glutamic acid, hydrolyzed oat flour, hydrolyzed plant protein, and the list This is supposed to be autolyzed plant protein over there where it says a Q. I hit a Q instead of an A. Anything that's hydrolyzed, it's almost always has MSG because the hydrolyzation process makes the food have no taste. So they add taste to it by exciting your neurons to make you think it has a flavor. It hides in a lot of different words. You can look here. There's more information on your handout sheet. But just remember that it's really not a healthy option for us to eat, and even just any kind of sodium. But monosodium actually creates lesions in the hypothalamus, which is one of your endocrine glands, and it's also part of the brain. And so as it's making lesions in the hypothalamus, then that can throw off your entire endocrine system. So you want to really be careful with monosodium glutamate. All right. It also interferes with your neurologic system, and specifically my brain just stopped. I must have had some artificial sugar or monosodium glutamate. It interferes with the nervous system. So you want to really be careful with excitotoxins or anything that's going to change neurons or brain chemicals in the brain. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the immune system. I wanted to kind of get into the immune system today because I want to talk about how our immune system works and fights against or uses foods and fights against foods or things that come into our body. Our external defenses include skin, our mucous membranes. The external defenses would include the outer layer of your skin and your dead skin cells. They protect your skin. Your sweat washes microbes away. Your lungs contain cilia that collect the microbes, and so you can cough them out. If you swallow a microbe, the stomach acid kills most of them. The hydrochloric acid in your stomach kills most of them. But if it doesn't kill all of them, then anything that gets into your gut is then managed by the bacteria, the good bacteria. And so that's why I say over and over that the digestive tract is like one of your best immune system. It's like 80% of your immune system, 60 to 80, depending on which research you look at. It's really important to keep your gut healthy because those are your external defenses against anything that's coming against your body and your immune system. Internal defenses are like phagocytes, those pac-men of your white blood cells. They kill the pathogens. They help. Another thing is your inflammatory response. So as your body, if you have inflammation, the body is using that inflammatory response to kill pathogens. And fever, of course, if you're sick, you've got the flu or a virus, your body will go into fever to try to kill that. That's very normal. It's basically fever is your body's final defense against general threats. So general disorders. Now, then there's the immune system, the antibodies in the body. These are the antibodies are what target specific threats. It's the white blood cells that overwhelm and destroy whatever microbes are in the body that are attacking. And these antibodies are what we measure if you have an autoimmune disease or something like that. We look to see, is your body creating too many antibodies against a specific function of the body? And so antibodies are like, that's the big one. That's like, I'm going to create something that's very specific for that particular issue. And that's the basically how the immune system works. It goes through these three defense systems. And so we have our first one, our second defense system where you actually have symptoms. And then the third one, which can turn into an autoimmune disease. So I want to look at some immune boosting foods. I think these are really, really key. Citrus has vitamin C. That can be any kind of citrus, lemons, limes, oranges, grapefruits. Are very high in vitamin C. Broccoli has vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin E, and it helps to regulate the immune system. Vitamin E does. It helps to regulate the immune system. Broccoli also has an abundance of antioxidants and fiber, and if you need to make sure that you cook it minimally, like steam it and don't get it too cooked. Bell peppers, specifically the red ones, have beta carotene. That helps keep your eyes and your skin healthy. Garlic helps to fight infection, of course, and ginger also helps decrease inflammation. Spinach is high in vitamin C and antioxidants and beta carotene. Believe it or not, spinach has beta carotene. Most people don't think of it because it's not red, it's green, but it's high in beta carotene. Very good for your eyes and your skin. Fermented foods, of course, and we'll talk more about that next week, like yogurt and kefir and kombucha. They're high in probiotics, especially, and if you make milk-based probiotics or milk-based fermented foods, they're also high in vitamin D. If you have vitamin D fortified milk products. Turmeric is an anti-inflammatory. Green tea provides flavonoids, which are antioxidants. Papayas not only have those digestive enzymes that we talked about last week, but they also are high in vitamin C. Kiwis have vitamin K, vitamin C, folate, and potassium. Oranges are also high in potassium, and bananas are also high in potassium. They're good potassium foods. Poultry, or chicken and turkey, are good for vitamin B6, and it helps with the blood cells. Sunflower seeds, vitamin E, vitamin B6, phosphorus, magnesium, and just full of amazing vitamins. And almonds are high in vitamin C and vitamin E, which again, vitamin E is great for regulating the immune system. So some great foods here that help with our overall immune system, boosting that immune system to get your immune system healthy. All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about stress. So, as you can see here, I have a beautiful tiger. It's not going to get you. Don't stress out. But if you were to see one of these lovely creatures coming up to you in the street, your body would go into something called fight or flight. This is a natural stress response, also called the sympathetic response. The brain and the nervous system will tell the hypothalamus, which sits right in the base of the brain. That's a little brain there, to see it. The base of the brain right there is the hypothalamus. It is both an endocrine gland and a part of the brain. And it works as a liaison between the nervous system, the central nervous system, and the endocrine system. So it's a really important part of our brain. It's also the one that gets attacked by things like monosodium glutamate because it's not protected by the blood-brain barrier. But that little hypothalamus, that little tiny part of the brain, it works both with the nervous system, sends signals to the nervous system. It also sends signals to the pituitary, and they talk back and forth. The pituitary is the king. Pituitary gets a signal from the hypothalamus. The nervous system is all of going crazy, and it sends a signal down to the adrenals and says, hey, we need to run. There's a tiger. And so the adrenals get all up in arms, and they send out the adrenaline, and the adrenaline goes up really high levels, and then it crashes down really fast. That is our primary response to a fight or flight situation. You saw this tiger, and the tiger made you go, oh, you got the signal through your eyes to the brain, to the hypothalamus, down to the pituitary, and into the adrenals, and you have adrenaline, and you can either fight or run. The secondary response is running the distance. So you remember that our adrenaline levels come up and back down. Then the adrenal glands or the body produces cortisol. The cortisol comes up here. Its level is usually down here. Its level comes up because that's the secondary response to fight or flight or to stress. That secondary response is, I now need to run and run and run to get as far as I can. Lots of things happen when you go through that secondary response. Cortisol causes your metabolism to slow down. Cortisol shuts down the initial inflammation or immune response. Cortisol removes your interest in daily in eating, so your appetite goes down. You don't have much appetite. Cortisol causes the libido to go away because you don't have time when you're running from a tiger to stop and enjoy your spouse. So all of these things happen when cortisol is in place, and many of you may be suffering from this secondary response. But here's the thing, you're not running from a tiger. So unlike running from the tiger, you're sitting in front of a computer or you're at work and your tiger is coming every day, and your tiger is keeping you stressed. Whatever that tiger is keeping you stressed, and your cortisol level is up here, and you've been there for so long, many of you have been there for so long, that it thinks that's now normal and it's supposed to stay up there. And so the body has adjusted and said, oh, well, we're going to have to keep running from this tiger because we've been running from this tiger for a very long time, and I'm just going to keep giving you extra cortisol. Well, that does a bunch of things. As I said, this response destroys your immune system. It lowers your immune system. The adrenaline increases inflammatory response. The cortisol then turns around and suppresses that immune response to less than 40 to 70% of what it's supposed to be, below normal, 40 to 70% below normal, so that it can stop the inflammation. It lowers our sex hormones, it lowers our appetite, and overall, it makes you just not a very healthy person. And this happens on and on and on for a lot of us who are not finding ways to activate what's called the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic in our body is what calms down the sympathetic response. It stops the production of cortisol. It increases our immune system. It increases our the sex hormones and the appetite, and it brings us back to what the body should be at a normal balance. But unfortunately, many of us have gotten to a place where we are just stuck in this high level of stress, or even if it's not a really high level of stress, but just a constant stress. Or maybe you're not stressed anymore, but you've gone through a bad stress situation over a long period of time. You've come through caregiving for a family member or a bad relationship. And those long-term stressors can be just as bad for your body and can do the same thing, even though they've been in the past. And a lot of people come into my office and say, well, I don't really feel stressed. But they have come to this place in their body where the body thinks that's supposed to be normal, and they don't know what it feels like to be balanced anymore. So let's look at some of the warning signs of this stress that we might have for prolonged periods of time. So there's two different columns. The first column is usually first things that you might feel or see or experience. The second column is specifically chronic issues, like these are things that'll happen if this is bad. This is where it can end up if you don't take care of the stress response early on. So some of the physical signs you can see here: muscle tension and headaches, tiredness, you don't sleep well, your face will break out, your pulse will increase, you'll have indigestion and nausea, you might get flushed, a hot feeling in your face. If you don't manage or find a way to manage your stress response, you can start having migraines or frequent headaches, prolonged headaches. You might get sick more often. Dizziness and fainting can happen, chest pain, shortness of breath, stomach problems, and just difficulty with your sleeping. And those kinds of things can happen long-term. Those are just physical side effects. Let's look at some behavior issues. Your appetite will change. You will either become compulsive or you won't want to eat at all. You become impatient, careless, or hyperactive. You'll have poor productivity or low energy. You will try to avoid situations because you just can't deal with them right now. Your sleep patterns can change. Really seriously, the sleep patterns are a big thing. If you're not getting any sleep, that just increases the stress on the body and doesn't allow your body to rest. Some people deal with these things by increasing alcohol, cigarette, or drug use. We see a lot of absenteeism, aggression, and irritability in the job, and sometimes people just will start crying for no reason. Hormones can do that. And remember, this all has to do with hormones in the body. Throws off all of the other hormones as well. Emotional things, anxiety, sadness, moodiness, grumpiness, loss of a sense of humor, withdrawing or feeling isolated. Your self-esteem might get lower. You might have feelings of guilt or shame. And if this continues, you might have some extreme anger outbursts. You lose your libido, and you might have feelings of anxiety or panic. I know I have a lot of people that come in and they deal with panic attacks. And honestly, if we could have gotten this much earlier, they wouldn't have ever reached that point. So if you're only getting those little warning signs, please, please, please start doing something now to help. We'll talk about some things that you can do that'll help. Okay. Our perception of what's happening around us changes a lot of times when the stress response has taken control. We have difficulty making decisions, or we just can't think straight. We have difficulty with coordination. We aren't as creative as we used to be. We might get forgetful or vague. We might just have an overall negative feeling, or feel like everything is just always not going my way, or I might feel like things are always bad. I might feel defensive or feel rejected. I might just make impulsive decisions, or I might overreact to situations. As this develops further, we start having poor concentration. We have fear of failure or negative self-talk. We have feelings of unfairness and just don't seem to be able to switch off our thinking. And I know tons of people that have that issue. I've had to deal with that myself as well. So how do we combat this stress? We need to first look at our diet. Diet can implicate all kinds of issues. Eating the right foods can help the brain manage stressors more productively. You can try yoga or qigong, prayer or meditation, positive self-talk, other therapies like the treatments that we do in the office, some mild exercise, not strenuous though, because that'll cause additional adrenal stress. There's a positive self-talk worksheet that I encourage everyone to use. It's in your handouts for the day. Prayer and meditation are always important. There's a meditation resource at the end. I'll talk about a couple of resources that you can utilize at the end of this workshop. And then we do auricular therapy. You could do pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. There's the biomat, which is a biotherapy, electrical biotherapy through crystals, helps to lower cortisol levels. There are a lot of things that help lower cortisol levels, and that's really the key, is to get your cortisol levels in balance. So any of these things that you want to use, if you're in the local area, you're welcome to come in to do detox or do the stress treatments that we do here in the office, or you can find someone locally that has some of these devices, or just turn on YouTube. There's yoga on YouTube all over the place. So, do some things to help lower your cortisol levels and lower your stress. It's really important. And if you can, do something daily. All right. So here's a few resources for meditation apps that I talked about. There's one called Headspace. Headspace is great for beginners. So Headspace these are apps you can download for your phone. They're both for iPhone or Android or whatever kind of phone if you've got a smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, they won't work. But Headspace is great for beginners. It's got some simple, easy meditations. Now, meditation doesn't mean you're going to sit cross-legged and put your fingers like this and go and devoid your mind of anything. This is usually, a lot of these are just for relaxation, and many of them are guided. So they're talking to you and you're thinking about as you're going through the relaxation process. Some of them are very simple, like just squeezing tight and relaxing each muscle group in your body to try to relax and release some of the cortisol in that's built up in the bloodstream and in the body. So Headspace is great for beginners. Smiling Mind is good for all ages. Has some children ones. So if you want to kind of start helping your children out, if you've got some children that are dealing with a lot of stress, Smiling Mind is very good. My personal favorite is the Insight Timer. It's got both, I say it's got 4,500 different things. These are, by the way, all free apps for you. The Insight Timer has some music ones where it just plays nice, calm, relaxing music. It has some guided meditations that are really nice. They go from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. You've got different structures and different voices, so you're not having to listen to the same voice like mine over and over and over. So you have, like, there's different instructors and they all speak a little differently, and their calmness in their voices are a little bit different, so you can kind of pick through and find what really calms you down. I know sometimes a voice will be irritating, so having that opportunity to listen to different voices is always really good. And then finally, for those really serious people who want to have some serious practice, the mindfulness app, it actually gives you timers and reminders, and it's really great for the serious practitioner who wants to practice meditation. But there's just a few that I will recommend for you. I feel like really do something. Go on the internet and look up yoga on YouTube and watch that and just try to do some of the poses in yoga. It doesn't have to be religious. It's primarily just to lower your cortisol levels and to manage your stress. Okay, so last but definitely not least are our goals for the week. So what I'd like for you to do this week is to read your labels. Look at the foods that are in your pantry and remove items that you look at and you say, yeah, this has aspartame and monosodium glutamate and they really aren't healthy for me. So donate them. That sounds horrible. Donate them to people who aren't knowledgeable. No. Just, purge your pantry because it's going to be really important. You don't have to do it all at once. Pick one thing, like artificial sweeteners. Just go through and remove things that have artificial sweeteners. And then you can go through another time when you have the energy and try to eliminate the MSG or extra sodium. And just start cleaning your pantry and your food stuff and read your labels. As you're doing it at home, it'll help you read them and understand them. So next time you shop, you'll be able to identify a really nice, good sources of food. So you can go out into the grocery store and you'll look at those labels. You've had lots of experience because you've gone through your pantry and looked at labels, and you'll say, yeah, okay, I know I can't eat this, or hey, this looks pretty good. And if you're not sure, take a picture of it, put it up in the healthy chat, and I'll take a look at it. All right. If you find a meditation app and try it at least 2 to 3 times this week. If you'd rather do yoga, find a yoga instructor on YouTube and try to do that a couple times, 2 to 3 times this week. Find something. It doesn't have to be the meditation. It can be yoga. It can be anything. Do something this week that will help to manage stress. Decide to, just do something calming, relaxing. Just disconnect from your activities or your business or your work or your schedule just for 30 minutes 3 times this week. Whatever that is for you, whatever is calming for you. Try to turn down the mind for just a few minutes to calm down the cortisol responses that your body has. You'll be surprised at how well you'll feel just after doing this, practicing this for a couple of weeks. Now, there is a self-talk worksheet. I did not go into that in too much depth, but it has some questions, and I'd like for you to do this, not for me, but for yourself. If you find yourself talking negatively, complete the self-talk worksheet. I think it will help you identify, and if you do it, talk with me in the chat. It's something that we can work on together, and I'll happily work with you and work on some changing some of our self-talk from negative to positive. And you'll be surprised at how well that also helps to lower cortisol levels in our bodies. All right, well, I think that's it for this week. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me in the chat, and I'll try to answer them in the beginning of our class next week. All right, well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.